The cliffs of Eldermoor were wild and dangerous, where the sea crashed against sharp rocks with a roar that could scare anyone. At the cliff's edge stood the Eldermoor Lighthouse, its old stone tower beaten by storms but still standing strong. Its lantern sent a bright golden light across the dark waves, guiding ships to safety. For 50 years, Marianne, the lantern keeper, had cared for that light. At 72, her silver hair was tied back in a tight braid, and her hands were rough from carrying heavy oil cans and cleaning salty glass. Her eyes were sharp, like the gulls flying above, watching the sea, the sky, and the man she had married. Elliot was 34, with messy dark hair and a smile that could make anyone like him. He came to Eldermoor 2 years ago, a stranger with just a guitar and a smooth voice. Some villagers thought he was a poet, others a dreamer, and a few whispered he was trouble. Marianne didn't listen to their talk. When Elliot got down on one knee one warm spring evening, holding out a rose he'd carved from driftwood, she felt her lonely heart stir. She saw a chance to have someone to share her quiet nights. Elliot saw something else, her wealth. She owned land along the cliffs, a good amount of savings, and the lighthouse, which could be sold for a lot of money. Their wedding was simple, held in the cool shade of the lighthouse. Marianne wore her mother's old lace dress, faded but beautiful. Elliot wore a suit he borrowed, a bit too small for him. The villagers showed up, but their smiles were tight, and their whispers were sharp. "She's old enough to be his grandma," they said. "He's only after her money." Marianne pushed their words away, holding Elliot's hand as they promised to love each other. She believed in his warm kisses and the way he called her "my beacon," his voice soft and close. But love, like the sea, can hide dangerous pulls that drag you down. Elliot moved into the lighthouse with just a few things: a worn leather journal, his guitar, and big dreams that didn't fit in tiny Eldermoor. He talked about opening a tavern or moving to a city full of bright lights. Marianne listened, her heart heavy. Her whole life had been about keeping the lantern burning, saving ships from the rocks. Could she give that up for him? She started teaching him how to be a keeper, how to cut the lantern's wick just right, how to clean the glass until it sparkled. He nodded, but his eyes kept looking out to the sea, like he was counting something in his head. At night, they shared a small bedroom under the lighthouse tower. The bed creaked under their weight, and the quilts smelled of salt and home. They made love in the dim light, Marianne's body showing her years, but moving with quiet strength. Elliot's touch was eager, his hands exploring her skin, but his eyes seemed far away. "You're my sea," he'd whisper, kissing her neck. But she felt a distance in him, like he was already planning his next step. After, they lay quiet, the lighthouse's hum filling the silence. Marianne wondered if he loved her the way she loved him, or if his sweet words were just a show. During the day, they worked together, but Elliot wasn't much help. He'd carry oil cans but grumble about how heavy they were. He'd wipe down the glass but leave smudges. Marianne showed him the right way, staying patient even when he sighed. At night, they sat by the fire, and she told stories about the sea, tales of sailors who got lost, mermaids who tricked men, and promises that broke like waves. Her voice was warm, pulling you into the story like a fairy tale. Elliot laughed, calling them silly old stories. "The sea's just water," he said, drinking her whiskey. "It doesn't care about us." But Marianne's stories weren't just for fun. They were lessons, written in the wrinkles on her face, and the way she noticed him slip coins into his pocket when he thought she was asleep. The villagers' whispers got louder. "He's waiting for her to die," they said at the market, glancing at Marianne's rough hands. "He wants her money." She heard it all, but held on to hope. She thought of a fairy tale about a mermaid who gave up her voice for love, only to be hurt. Was she like that mermaid, giving too much? Or was Elliot the one in trouble, caught in his own lies? Their age difference was a big gap. She wanted a friend for her last years, and he wanted money to run from a past he wouldn't talk about. She felt him pulling away, pacing at night, getting annoyed when she asked about his life before Eldermore. "Why do you keep working so hard?" he snapped one night, his voice like a cold wind. "You're too old for this." Her quiet was heavier than the storm outside, and the lighthouse seemed to hold its breath. Winter came to Eldermore like a mean guest, covering the cliffs in ice and making the lighthouse feel like a frozen cage. Elliot's charm started to fade, his smiles as rare as a clear day. He spent more time in the village, drinking with fishermen and talking big about the money he'd make when the lighthouse was his. "Marianne's tired," he'd say, his voice smooth as ever. "She'll quit soon." The villagers nodded, but their eyes were hard. They loved Marianne, her steady ways, her stories that kept their kids away from the dangerous cliffs. Elliot was an outsider, and they could tell he was after something. Marianne noticed how often he was gone, and how he avoided the lantern room. One morning, while he was out, she found his journal hidden under a loose floorboard. She opened it, her hands shaking. The pages were full of plans, drawings of a tavern with his name on it, numbers showing how much the lighthouse and her land were worth, even a list of her savings. Her heart felt like it was breaking, but she didn't say anything. Instead, she told him a new story that night, her voice slow and serious. "A long time ago," she started, "a sailor found gold in a wrecked ship. He promised to share it with his wife, but he got greedy. He hid the gold and lied to her. The sea saw it all, and one night the waves came and pulled him down with his treasure." Elliot squirmed, his laugh nervous. "Just a story," he said, but her eyes held his, steady and knowing. Their nights together changed. One evening, Elliot tried to be close, pulling her into bed with soft words. They made love, but it felt different. His hands moved quickly like he was in a rush, and his kisses were short, not deep like before. Marianne went along, but her heart wasn't in it. She lay awake after, listening to the lighthouse's hum, feeling like his touch was more about keeping her happy than loving her. She wondered if he was thinking of someone else, someone younger, or just the money he wanted. A letter came one day, sealed with cracked wax. It was from a man in Portswell, saying Elliot owed money for gambling debts. Marianne read it alone, the wind screaming outside. He'd lied about starting fresh, about being free of his past. She hid the letter, deciding to test him. She started leaving work undone. Oil cans empty, the lantern's glass dirty. Elliot complained but did the tasks, muttering under his breath. His hands fumbled, and he cursed when the oil spilled. "This is your job," he said, glaring at her. Marianne watched, quiet, her stories teaching her to wait and see. One stormy night, the lantern's light went weak, flickering like it might go out. A ship's horn sounded far off, scared and loud. Marianne pretended to be sick, her voice shaky. "You're the keeper now," she told Elliot. "Go save them." He ran up the tower, his face pale, struggling with the wick as the oil ran low. The ship's horn got quieter, like it was giving up. Marianne climbed up behind him, her hands quick as she fixed the lantern in seconds. The light cut through the storm, and the ship was safe. Elliot's face was red with shame. "You let me mess up," he yelled. "A keeper's promise is to the light," she said calmly. "Not to you." Elliot tried to win her back after that. He brought her tea, read her poems by the fire, and one night he kissed her deeply, pulling her close. They made love, his hands softer this time, like he was trying to mean it. But Marianne felt the lie in his touch, the way his eyes didn't meet hers. She went through the motions, her body warm, but her heart cold. She told him about the mermaid again, who loved someone who didn't deserve her. She gave up her voice, Marianne said, but the sea gave it back. Elliot's face tightened. He knew she was figuring him out. The villagers stopped being nice to him. A fisherman told Marianne, "He's asking how to sell your land." She wasn't surprised. She'd learned to read the sea's moods, and reading Elliot was easier. She made a plan, clever like a fairy tale's lesson. One night, she gave him a paper, her writing neat. "This is the lighthouse's deed," she said. "Sign it, and it's yours when I'm gone." His eyes lit up, and he signed fast. But the paper was a trick. It made him promise to be the keeper for life. He didn't read the small words, too excited about her money. Marianne smiled, sad but strong. The sea had taught her to be patient, and she was ready to use it. The biggest storm ever hit Eldermore in February, a wild beast of wind and waves that shook the lighthouse like it wanted to tear it down. The lantern burned bright, but the sea was cruel, throwing ships around like they were nothing. Marianne and Elliot worked together, not talking, their quiet louder than the storm. The lantern's gears got stuck, making a horrible grinding noise. "Fix it!" Marianne yelled, her voice strong over the wind. Elliot froze, his hands shaking. He'd never cared about the light, only what it could get him. A ship's lights flashed below, weak and scared. Marianne climbed the tower's ladder, her old joints hurting, and fought the gears until they moved again. Elliot just stood there, no help at all, his greedy heart showing plain as day. The ship made it through, but the storm wasn't done. At dawn, Marianne faced him in the lantern room, the sea still loud below. "You signed the deed," she said, holding up the paper. "You're the keeper now, stuck with it by law. This light is your job, not your treasure." Elliot's face went white as he read the small words. "You lied to me," he shouted. "You're just a mean old woman." Marianne stood straight, her voice calm but firm. "I loved you, Elliot. I gave you my heart, my home, everything. You only wanted money. The sea doesn't let greed win, and neither do I." She showed him the letter about his debts, all the lies he'd told. "You thought I was foolish, but I've kept this light going through worse than you." Elliot grabbed for the deed, but Marianne was quick. She threw it into the fire, and the flames ate it up, burning his dreams with it. "Go," she said, "or stay, and keep your promise." He looked at her, the woman he'd misjudged, and saw strength like the mermaid's, bold, free, and whole. He chose to go. The villagers watched him leave, his guitar over his shoulder, his steps slow and heavy. Marianne stood on the cliff, the lighthouse behind her, its light steady as ever. She'd lost love, but she'd kept herself. The sea moved below, like it was nodding. That night, she went to the lantern room alone, her fingers brushing the glass. She didn't need anyone's touch, just the light that had always been hers. she whispered to the waves, promising again, "I am enough." Spring came back to Eldermore, covering the cliffs in bright wildflowers. Marianne took care of the lantern by herself, her heart hurt but healing. The villagers were kind, bringing her bread, fixing her gates, and showing they cared. They talked about Elliot like a lesson, a man who lost everything because he wanted too much. Marianne didn't brag. She'd loved him, even with his faults, but love needs trust to work. Her bedroom was quiet now, the quilts folded neatly, no trace of Elliot's smell. She slept better, the lighthouse's hum like a friend. She started telling stories again, sitting with village kids by the fire. Her tales about mermaids and lost ships felt stronger now, each one teaching about giving too much or standing tall. The kids listened, their eyes big, learning what Marianne had learned the hard way. Love is a promise, not a trade. The lighthouse was her proof, its light a vow she'd kept. She wrote her story in a journal, not for money, but to remember. The keeper's promise, she wrote, is to guide others, not to take. I broke my heart to keep that promise, and I'd do it again. Marianne didn't look for love again. The sea was her friend, the lantern her purpose. She found a new keeper, a young woman with the same spark she had. Marianne taught her everything, how to keep the light burning, how to listen to the sea. On her last night as keeper, she stood in the lantern room, the sea quiet below. She whispered, "Thank you," feeling the mermaid's strength in her own voice, a voice she'd always had. The lighthouse glowed, a sign of her courage, and Eldermore rested safely under its light. The lantern keeper's vow shows us what love and greed can do. Marianne and Elliot's marriage teaches us that love can break if trust isn't there. Their age difference wasn't the problem. Their different hearts were. People judged them, but their choices made the stories end. Marianne's fairy tale stories helped her see Elliot's lies and find her strength. Like the mermaid, she gave a lot for love, but she saved herself. What's your light? What promise keeps you going? Have you loved someone who didn't see your worth? Tell me in the comments. This story grows with your thoughts. If it touched you, like, subscribe, and let's keep sharing stories that matter. Keep your light shining.